We are live, sir. You can start.
Namaskar. Good afternoon to everybody in India and good day to those joining us from abroad. Mudit Narayan from the Atal Innovation Mission Niti Aayog. It's our pleasure today to invite a galaxy of stars from India and abroad to discuss the recent changes in India's space sector. Let me start by inviting Mission Director, Atal Innovation Mission, Mr. Ramanan, to share a few thoughts. I invite Dr. Sivan after that.
Good afternoon, everybody, and I do hope everyone is safe and sound in these difficult times following the practices of COVID-19 that we need to adhere to. I am delighted, and it is indeed a privilege as the Mission Director of Atal Innovation Mission to be able to introduce Dr. Sivan for his opening remarks today. As you may be aware, Atal Innovation Mission is a national initiative for promoting and creating an ecosystem of innovation and entrepreneurship across the length and breadth of our country. And we are very excited about the recent reforms in the space sector as they will spur innovation and entrepreneurship in this sector. We are already working closely with ISRO in engaging with Indian startups and in supporting more entrepreneurship through challenges and through joint programs. Dr. Sivan, of course, is a household name in India and needs no real introduction even abroad. However, it is my pleasant duty to be able to share a few words about him. He is the chairman of ISRO. He holds a master's degree in aerospace from the Indian Institute of Science and a PhD in aerospace engineering from IIT Mumbai. He joined ISRO in the year 1982 and since then has contributed immensely to the launch vehicle programs, especially during the formative phase of the PSLV project and the development phase of GSLV and GSLV Mark 3. He has played an instrumental role in flight demonstration of reusable launch vehicle technology demonstrator, RLV-TD, and testing of scramjet engines. He is the chief mission architect for 104 satellites launched in a single mission of PSLV and Chandrayaan-2. Dr. Sivan is a fellow of Indian National Academy of Engineering, INAE, Aeronautical Society of India, System Society of India, and Indian System Society for Science and Engineering. He has received numerous awards, to name a few: Tilak Memorial Award, Dr. Vikram Sarabhai Research Award, Dr. Biren Roy Space Science Award, 2020 IEEE Simon Ramo Medal, and the 2020 Alan E. Emil Memorial Award by International Astronautical Federation. Dr. Sivan has numerous research publications in reputed national and international journals and co-authored a book, Integrated Design for Space Transportation System, published by Springer. It is my wonderful opportunity and privilege to be able to introduce Dr. Sivan to all of you, and I request Dr. Sivan for his opening remarks.
Good evening, sirs. Most respected Kasturirangan sir, our father of Indian space program at present, and respected VijayRaghavan sir, and mission director from Niti Aayog, and Ramanan sir, that young entrepreneurs, other members of the panel. First of all, I'm extremely happy that Niti Aayog and VijayRaghavan sir combinedly arranged this meeting at a timely, and it's a very important meeting. In fact, that I would say that this is that forerunner of that meeting, whatever we are going to have in another fortnight. It is that about the industry meet regarding the reform, whatever we are talking. And I'm happy that this activities kick-started today itself with that all entrepreneurs in that loop. So, and first of all, let me also welcome all the members for this important discussion, this one. So I would like to say that, and that as yesterday I mentioned, this our Honorable Prime Minister Modi ji has a very, very larger vision of transforming India. And in this, his vision, definitely that space sector is the one area which need to get reformed. The reason I am telling is, as all of you are aware, it's nothing new. If you are seeing that the type of the space-based applications, it is that the recent times it is increasing exponentially, and at the same time that when we are moving towards implementing that Digital India program, these applications is going to explode, and I'm 100% sure that ISRO alone will not be able to meet this application requirements. All of you are aware. If at all you wanted to make that ISRO to meet this application requirement, ISRO has to be made 10 times or 20 times more bigger than the present version, which is an impossible task. At the same time, we do have seen that across our country, a lot of industries, startups, and young minds are coming forward and to take up the task of carrying out that space activities. When we are talking space activities, it's including everything. It's a rocket building, satellite building, then launching that satellite and owning the satellite and providing the services, providing the ground equipments, like that many things. So definitely when there is a hand ready to get that to meet the requirements of the nation in an efficient way, we must make use of that. That's one point. Rather than go on trusting on that ISRO to do that activity and go on the pressurizing, no way, because already ISRO has reached a point of inflection. That's one point number one. Point number two, if you are saying that the global space economy, it is something like the $360 billion, that the global space economy. And if you are seeing that how much India contributes for that is merely 3%. This reduction, that reduced contribution to the global space economy is mainly because the space activities are being done by the government agency. Not much people are getting involved. If you are saying that, so it is essential as a requirement from us to enhance, increase that our contributions in the global space economy, and it is our wish to take the maximum out of the $360 billion. That is the second one. Definitely, we have to do something more than the present systems to acquire more and more the space economy. That is the second part. Third part, out of this space economy we are seeing, as all of you are aware, around 2% of the entire economy is for the launch vehicle. About 5% is for that satellite. Nearly 48% is for the ground equipments. And the 45%, the economy is for the mainly for the satellite applications. So satellite applications and the ground equipments have the maximum benefits for the industries to do it. At the same time, the remaining that 7% regarding launch vehicle and satellite, also it is essential. Without that 7%, this other 93% we cannot achieve. So it is even though it's a risky job for that 7% cases, we have to quit. So definitely considering all these things, if we are seeing that, it is the right time to enable the private players to carry out the space-based activities in all the sectors. Of course, when we are enabling the space-based, this one, we have to ensure that we have this space activities is that very safety critical activity, security critical activity. At the same time, it's having a lot of the legality and the technical aspect and the quality aspect. Many things are there. Now, how to enable this young industrialists to make use of the future? We thought that it is the right time to have a new system, because right now there is no mechanism. Because I know that some of the entrepreneurs here right now attending, so they themselves had experience of interacting with the device. And because there are no formal mechanism, we are not able to make them to proceed further. So right now, whatever the mechanisms right now is implemented or recommended by the government, the InSpace, it's an excellent mechanism, and it's having its own directorates. That is technical directorates, monitoring directorates, and legal, safety, security, or promotional activity. Everything will be done by this directorate. And this directorate's input will be going to the board of the InSpace. And this board will contain not only from the InSpace people, and also from the members from industries and academia. And this board will take these applications as per the recommendations of the technical directorate and assess. And based on the assessment, they will decide, okay, this is whether we can go ahead or not. They will give permission, will be given for carrying out the space activities. At the same time, definitely that the space activities is a very high risk as well as that high investment business. At the same time, we don't want to burden the entrepreneurs with putting many high investment burden on them. So what this program or this feature has suggested is to allow these people to make use of the costly facilities of ISRO, of course for payment basis, but the payment can be decided based on the case-to-case basis. Because suppose that is that some facilities available elsewhere and they wanted to make use of our facility, that we have to understand what is the requirement, and that is the case by case, the cost can be decided based on the merit, and the cost can be whether it is the full cost or it can be that only consumables or it can be even free, depends on the case by case. That's what we decided. And once the decision is made, this system is independent of the systems in ISRO. So they are allowed to take the decision and on their own without any interference from the existing ISRO mechanism. And once the decision is made, it will be binding on all the team members, including ISRO. So they have to implement. To ensure that whether it is implemented correctly or not, there's a monitoring mechanism. In case any the deficiencies happen in the monitoring system, then automatically it will be corrected. Suppose still the thing is not getting corrected, it will go to TDSAT. So that we have put a very safe and safety mechanism for enabling the private team to make this the system to utilize. I would request all that youngsters as well as that the industries, big industries, small industries, or startups, make use of this the facility and kindly come forward and do that space activity. And I would request all of us should work together to make India the great technological powerhouse. That is our wish, and I am sure that with this reform, that our Honorable Prime Minister's the vision will be getting realized with by the young entrepreneurs of the country. So I wish, and I invited the people to don't wait for this system to be in place. We are ready to receive you now itself. Please start reacting with us, and we are going to have that detailed industry meet maybe in another fortnight. Then we'll make the whole system in operation by another 3 to 6 months. And that's all I want to tell, sir. Please, I am very positive, and we are ready to receive that application now itself. That's what I want to tell you, sir. Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much, Dr. Sivan, for sharing your insightful thoughts. You are a true inspiration for all the citizens of India from all age groups, ranging from as young as 10-year-old students to as old as 90-year-old seasoned professionals. With your permission now, I would like to introduce the additional panel members. We have a very distinguished panel who have taken the road less traveled in India and are enabling cutting-edge technology developments in the space sector. We have Dr. K Kasturirangan, the former chairman of ISRO, who has been one of the key architects of the Indian space ecosystem along with Dr. Sivan. Dr. Kasturirangan is an astrophysicist by training who contributed to ISRO's journey for 3 decades and also served as its chairman from 1994 to 2003. And more recently, he chaired the committee that was interested to draft the new education policy, which is another truly transformational move by the government of India. Warm welcome to you, sir. We also have Lieutenant General PJS Pannu, who is the former Deputy Chief of Integrated Defense Staff. He raised the country's ever Defense Cyber Agency, Defense Space Agency, and the Armed Forces Special Operations Division under the Integrated Defense Staff. Sir, you are also an inspiration for the young India, and we really look forward to hearing your thoughts to make India a global leader in space technology. I'm also glad to welcome Dr. Bidushi Bhattacharya, who's a former NASA scientist turned astropreneur with 3 decades experience in spacecraft development, new space growth, academic administration, and scientific research. She's presently the CEO of AstroHub, a global startup dedicated to space workforce development through hands-on training. Ma'am, there are several aspiring women entrepreneurs who would be delighted to hear your experiences today with us. We also have Mr. Rohan Ganapathy with us, who is the CEO and CTO of Bellatrix Aerospace Private Limited, a new space company involved in the development of advanced in-space propulsion systems. Rohan is an aeronautical engineer and a technologist at heart, and Bellatrix is the first startup in the country to work with ISRO and DRDO and has also received the National Award from the Honorable President of India. So lots of aspiring entrepreneurs waiting to hear from you, Rohan. And finally, a warm welcome to Mr. Parthsarathi Trivedi, who is the CEO and co-founder of Skylo, who will be launching the world's first 5G IoT network over satellite in India. Parth has also served on the US delegation to the UN technical body on global aviation and led aerospace missions sponsored by the US Department of Defense, NASA, and Lockheed Martin. And Parth has been trained as an aerospace engineer from MIT. So, like I said, we are all extremely delighted to welcome all our panelists. And I now request my colleague Mudit Narayan to ask his first question to our esteemed panel. Mudit, over to you.
Thank you, Aisha. We have a brilliant panel. Sir, I just checked YouTube. Ladies and gentlemen, we have more than 800 people following us. So we have a large audience, much bigger than what we normally are used to in conference rooms, auditoria. And that is the power of technology. But with this technology also comes a few changes in habits. So how we'll start is I'll ask one question and request all the panelists to share their thoughts on that. And then we'll go with maybe individual questions. So Dr. Kasturirangan, if I may, I'll start off with you. We would like you to share your thoughts on how can partnering with private sector help India to go to new heights in space. And then I request each of the panel members to share their thoughts on 2 to 3 minutes on this topic. So you'll have to unmute yourself.
Yeah, muted. So you please unmute.
Yes.
Is it okay? Hello?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. First of all, I would like to thank my friend Professor VijayRaghavan and also the members of the Niti Aayog for giving this very unique opportunity of sharing my thoughts on a very important decision that the government under the leadership of Prime Minister has taken a couple of days back, and on which we had Professor Dr. Sivan giving a little elaboration of the various aspects of this important decision. So far as the question that you have raised is concerned, actually the relevance in the present context is, I should say, it's a logical evolution of a growth model for a space activity in which space industry becomes a significant contributor in the risk investments. Second, it becomes an instrument for multiplier effect of public investments which are already there. The third aspect is the space industry provides an increased capacity. We have a present level of meeting the aspirations of the users. We need to increase this. And here is where the space industry can play a role. And most importantly, it addresses one of the major gaps that have been present in the overall ecosystem, namely the lack of integrated space industry. That is what I mean is an end-to-end capability to create a total system, a rocket, a satellite, or an application, or owning operating space system assuming total risk responding to the market opportunities. The policy, as enunciated here, it will certainly address this in the context of what Dr. Sivan said about it being investment intensive, and globally regulated sector. This is a very important aspect of the space characterization, and therefore a clear understanding of the role of the private sector and an environmental transparency of regulation. If you ask us in the earlier years in trying to move it further, these are some of the concerns which has not been sorted out. I think the present policy and the present decision of the government could go a long way in addressing this very critical aspect of industry getting in a big way. And I should also mention that about 1 million people are today engaged in space activities all over the world. If you look at the scale and the scope of the activity for India itself, in my view, it can generate about 1 to 2 lakh jobs in the foreseeable future. Opportunities, of course, will be said by many others, but all I would like to say in conclusion is that the system certainly need to make work. That is the most important thing. Independent and transparent regulation is one aspect of it. We need to work out the details. A clear policy on technological, intellectual property and infrastructure support. Dr. Sivan mentioned about it, I think not only from ISRO, but also from the other government institutions. And policy on government procurement in the sector, and renewed national coordination mechanisms with other interministerial mechanisms and so on. And an R&D challenge towards to the industry, that's the other part of it. I also know that the youngsters are very much looking forward to undertake several initiatives in space, not only in the university system where I see interest in building instruments for planetary missions and so on, but equally people want to take an end-to-end system on interplanetary mission. I think the present policy can go a long way in assuring them that you can now think of the sky, you can think of the space, and you can think of any extent. And I think there is an answer that will be available from ISRO. And today, Sivan has made it very clear. And that is exactly what the vision of our Prime Minister is. I would like to congratulate the Prime Minister, the government, and the Department of Space for this extraordinary initiative, very timely one, and it could prove to be transformative so far as the space activity for India is concerned in future. Thank you.
Thank you, sir, for your encouraging words. Dr. Bidushi, if I can invite you to share your thoughts at this point as a representative of the private sector and somebody who's seen the space sector across many countries, the role of the private sector and how India can benefit from these recent changes.
Thank you very much. I am very honored to be here on this distinguished panel, and I really appreciate the opportunity. I am very excited about InSpace and what ISRO is doing in general, because I really see the hugest talent pool in the world sitting in India right now. As we heard from Dr. Sivan, we're talking about a current global economy that's $360 billion, which is just mind-blowing. But we're also looking at an economy that's predicted by many people to be worth $3 trillion by the year 2040. And the only way that we're actually going to get there is to bring talented young people on board from the private sector. I get job applications and requests probably at least a couple times a week from young people in India. And to date, I've been telling them, well, you know, there are some opportunities that will be coming in the future, and we don't know exactly what's going to happen, but keep your enthusiasm, don't be discouraged. And we're at this point right now where we have this incredible technical talent, and we have talent in other areas as well. And it's going to be wonderful seeing young people come on board and be engaged. And not just that, we have talented people across all backgrounds, not just in STEM, but in other areas as well. And I'm really looking forward to see what kinds of ideas people can have to actually help us save the world today. We're in this COVID era, and what's going to happen to the world globally after the post-COVID economy. I think space plays a unique position in trying to solve some of these problems. And if we can synthesize space-based data and services with ground-based technology, I think we'll come up with some very unique solutions for everything from supply chains to food security. So I'm very optimistic about the future, and I'm really looking forward to whatever is in store. So thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you, ma'am. General Pannu, your experience with establishing the Defense Space Agency and how you see the changes recently to serve the broader purpose.
Thank you, Mudit, for asking me this question. Firstly, let me begin with thanking Professor VijayRaghavan and Niti Aayog for giving me this opportunity to speak here. Whatever has happened in the new policy change is music to my ears. Having spent about 40 years in uniform, we start our life with walking the terrain. And every time there was a question, what is behind the ridge line? You had to literally climb the ridge line and find out what is there behind it. And therefore, we discovered the importance of high ground. Space is the ultimate high ground. It is actually the God's eye. In fact, this technology itself is the technology of God, because it sees everything from top, it enables everything, it helps you in any which way, and it connects the world. The world has become one global village because of technologies such as space, which connects people, which directs people. As far as the military is concerned, I find that when I was involved in raising the Defense Space Agency, at the same time, I was also raising the Cyber Agency and the Special Forces Division. And I found that there was a correlation in all these where technology was the major thread which connected the entire requirement and met the entire requirement to make possible the revolution in military affairs. We invited a lot of experienced people from ISRO, from the DRDO, and also youngsters, as Dr. Sivan had said, youngsters from the startups. And we found that the kind of knowledge that they possess, the kind of ability that they possessed, and if we bring them all together, they can find solutions to huge amount of issues that we face, not only in defense, but even in other sectors of industry. And in fact, there is no discipline which is not touched by the space agency. So really speaking, the synergy that is now going to be created between the available agencies, that is the ISRO and the DRDO, along with the startups, these brilliant youngsters, I think are going to bring in so much of value rather than having supply-based capability. I think we will have a demand-based possibility to bring in huge amount of resources which the country really needs. We will be able to enable the Industry 4.0 to really translate into the military revolution, which I say that the fourth generation warfare is going to be only possible when we talk about digital India. We also talk about digital warfare. Lately, you would have heard that we talk about the digital warfare. It means non-contact battlefield. You know what's happening in our northern borders. I was commanding a corps there, and having walked and flown over most of the areas where today we have an engagement with the PLA, those are the kind of areas where you find that on the media itself, they are showing you live images from the satellites. With satellite, what resolution it gives you. There is huge amount of decision making that goes on. In fact, space is the one which not only brings the war to the war room, but is also a great enabler to make sure that the military machine of the future, which is going to be based on the AI, which is going to be based on digital platforms, systems such as C4I2 Star, as I talk about, it is not only the command control communication in computers, but also it gives you information intelligence for the surveillance and target acquisition along with reconnaissance. All this can be only put together by this technology, which I call the God of all technologies, that is the space. Thank you very much for allowing me to speak here, but I find there's a great potential. We have a huge pool of specialized youngsters now who will join in together in the liberal regime, which is not going to be stifled by tight regulations. I saw a whole lot of youngsters, who were looking at the space, but their feet was literally under some regulations which nobody understood. Now we talk about this in space. Now this Indian National Space Promotion and Authorization is a new phenomena in which I think the policies are going to be more favorable for the youngsters to come in and contribute freely with hand-holding from ISRO and the other organizations where the policy would need tweaking, long-term projects and long-term programs, and assured roadmaps can be unfolded by synergization of all of us together. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen.
Thank you, General Pannu. You mentioned the ridgelines and looking over it. We have two colleagues with us who actually braved and adventured into the space sector even before it was liberalized. So let me invite Rohan first to share his thoughts on the reforms and his expertise in the next 2-3 minutes before we go into a more open-ended conversation. Rohan and then Parth.
Hi, Mudit. Am I audible?
Yes, please go ahead.
I would like to thank Prof VijayRaghavan and team for giving me the startup community, the new space ecosystem here in country. And I would also like to tell that there's a thriving and vibrant new space ecosystem with many startups coming these days. And as General Pannu said, it's honey to our ears, reacting to this particular news which we saw yesterday. I have always maintained that space industry is something like software industry, what it is today, and it will create a lot of jobs in the foreseeable future. And as industry is moving towards industry 4.0, where machines are taking over majority of the jobs, but space is a field where you need talent and you need people, a lot of people to come and give solutions. And in India, from India, what we can offer, as I said, space is global. We have lots to offer. We should think space as a global industry. And for the global community to come and look at Indian products and Indian solutions, this particular body, which or news which came out yesterday, is an important step. And we are ready. The talent is there in the country, and everybody is ready to step in. And we want to offer what we can. And also, we have the risk-taking appetite. And I hope, and with this, we believe that we can be number one in the new space ecosystem and a formidable force for the foreseeable future. Thank you, Mudit.
Thank you, Rohan. Parth?
Thank you, Mudit, and thank you, Professor VijayRaghavan, sir, for having me here. And I must start by saying pranam to Dr. Kasturirangan, who is my mentor and guru, and without whom I wouldn't have been an aerospace engineer today. And from the earliest days, ISRO has been inspiring Indian minds towards science and technology. And we have such incredible talent in the country, which travels all around the world to absorb knowledge. Thanks to this government and the Honorable Prime Minister's visionary reform, many would now be able to apply their knowledge towards India's development in the space sector and allow our entrepreneurs to boldly go where few have gone before. To understand the significance of this reform, let me share a global perspective with you. The space industry is going through a rapid evolution at the moment. New constellations are bringing 28 terabits per second of bandwidth online, which is a 20x jump relative to today. That roughly equals the total amount of bandwidth we as a human species generate per second. While satellites have traditionally taken 3 to 4 years to produce, Airbus, for instance, now produces 4 satellites per day. Electric propulsion, rapid miniaturization, and cost reduction are actually challenging previously held beliefs about the capability limits of space-based platforms. And access to space is being commoditized globally. As an example, my professor at Stanford challenged the class to put a satellite inside a soda can, which led to the invention of the CubeSat. And satellites can now be manufactured on the same assembly lines as smartphones, and constellations can be upgraded with the same rapidity as software releases. So what this evolution is brought about mainly by the private sector on a global basis, if you were to consider. But the scale of this evolution is enabled by the public sector. The benefit of the private sector is catering not just to the national need, but also being able to cater to a much broader international market. But that also means that we're competing against companies that are hosted in countries that already have a highly developed policy framework and access to capital. Take New Zealand, for instance. They didn't even have a space agency before 2016, but one of their homegrown companies, Rocket Labs, had over the 10 years prior developed a successful small sat launch vehicle. So the government created the country's first space agency and policy framework in just 18 months to support the growth of similar companies, nudging Australia to also do the same thing. India can become the global hub for space activities. What does success look like? To me, success looks like when talent and companies across the world come to India for affordable and world-class space-enabled products and services, where a satellite and a mobile tower aren't viewed any differently, where our rocket launches become almost as routine as cargo aircraft operations, and where space technology becomes required curriculum, especially for our armed forces, who achieve operational superiority because of our indigenously built space systems, and where food we eat is produced with greater yield by farmers and fishermen who rely on machine learning derived predictions from space-based sensors. So in summary, predictable policy is a prerequisite to building a robust national space sector and pushing the country towards even greater self-reliance. And now what we're going to need is greater market awareness for new and emerging services, investor awareness. We will also need the insurance companies and financial institutions to buy and sell risk in the space sector. But most importantly, we're going to need brave entrepreneurs to come forward and take India to new heights in space after this historic step.
Thank you, Parth. Thank you for such a wide-ranging overview of the sector and some very interesting insights from New Zealand and other countries. Now, if I can go to the kind of questions you're getting from the audience, I'll raise one question to Dr. Bidushi, which is, what would it take for India to produce companies like SpaceX or the other companies that Parth mentioned? Would there be competition for Indian space sector? And how would it be free and fair to ensure a level playing field? What can India do to produce and attract companies like SpaceX and others? And others are also welcome to share their thoughts after Dr. Bidushi.
Okay, so I think the trick here is not to bring SpaceX in. I think the trick is to create your own SpaceX, whatever, for the next generation. So we're at a time right now where we've moved from these multi-billion-dollar missions, from like the Hubble Space Telescope at NASA, which was my first job out of university, to the point where we're building handheld satellites, CubeSats, which I think everybody here is familiar with. This is a CubeSat that was actually built by one of our team members in his apartment. And you can launch one of these for a few $100,000. And in his case, he's an engineering student. He has the background, but I think we have this enormous opportunity right now to create the next SpaceX by tapping the greatest resource that India has, which is its human capital. We have people who are very interested in space. And what I find is I do a lot of public speaking. It's very easy to get people excited about the space sector. It's inspirational, it's spiritual. People really get very much into what you're trying to tell them about astronomy or space. But I find that there's a real gap between that and a sense of tangibility and access to the sector. People think that, oh, that's too difficult for me. There are no jobs. I wouldn't even know where to start. And so our key here, and this is a great moment, is we can actually come in and provide a structured training and education program, not just for students who are in engineering programs who are already thinking about technology, but we're talking about building a true global ecosystem where India takes the lead. And to build an ecosystem, you have to move from just doing proof of technology, which has been how things have been my entire career. We build something, we test it, we fly it, does it work? Yes, what do we do next? Going from all these kinds of groundbreaking technologies, you have to add on another layer where you're actually providing commercial services, consumer-driven technology and services. And in order to do that, we're going to need people from the legal sector, which has been mentioned in terms of regulations. We will need people from finance. Obviously, startups need funding. There are 1,700 startups in the world today in the space sector. Less than 5% of those are based in India. We need to change that number. And in order to effectively bring startups up to speed, we need people who are not just doing the tech. We're going to need business people. We're going to need people in social services to help us contextualize space technology to make it usable here on Earth. We're going to need people in education. And in my view, the way to really bring this into the current movement and make sure that we hit that target of 2040, reaching a multi-trillion-dollar economy, is to provide training to people in all sectors, professionals who already have expertise, bringing them in and repurposing their skills for the space sector. And also the key here is to bring young people in and train them in space and let them brainstorm and come up with some fantastic nonlinear thinking and solutions that they will be able to contribute.
Any others who would like to weigh in on this question? How do we inspire Indian entrepreneurs and Indian companies of scale and level of SpaceX and others?
Well, I can come in if it's okay, Mudal.
Sir, please.
Yeah, what we've seen over the last few years is a spurt in the number of entrepreneurs, number of innovators, and we have seen most of them come in sectors where they can have an impact on society using technology which is readily available. We've also seen a spurt in the e-commerce sector. Now, the challenge is how much more can we get into the truly innovative deep tech sector, and that poses a big problem because it is non-trivial because that relies on decades of investment and experience in much larger economies. But the technology today, over the last couple of years, last decade actually, has changed so that miniaturization and the powering of miniaturization becomes feasible. And these are also modular. Now, this now allows deep tech to come in a big way. Yet, for that to scale, it has to be both innovative and competitive. Opening up of space allows extremely innovative and globally competitive ideas and technologies to come in. The demands on those technologies are so high in terms of quality in space that their use in more regular terrestrial applications becomes much easier if they succeed in space. So the inspiration which space brings will allow technologies to be tested out on scale over there in terms of their quality and their economy and their miniaturization, allowing them to be deployed on Earth much more easily.
Thank you, sir. Do I see Rohan wanted to say something?
Yes, Mudit, adding to what Professor VijayRaghavan said and what Bidushi said, we would require a lot of outreach in the country. And as you know, there's not enough clarity among the common public what space is contributing to the economy. So what I would like to suggest is in the upcoming in-space portfolio, we need to formally institute a division which comprises of social scientists, economists, space technologists, everybody coming together to roll a framework which would enable and inspire more youth to stay back in the country and contribute to this exciting area. Thank you.
Thank you.
May I add a word to this discussion?
Sir, please. Sir, please.
Yeah. Hello?
Yes, sir, please go ahead. I can hear you, sir.
This is adding more number of entrepreneurs to this that you wanted to respond to right now?
Absolutely.
Okay. The important thing is there are several low-hanging fruits today in the space activities, whether it is in the remote sensing applications, whether it is innovative use of navigational systems, innovative use of communication satellites, the role of telemedicine and teleeducation in the context of connectivities, and also the level to which we can bring in new areas like artificial intelligence, expert systems, and so on into this. The important thing on this is, first and foremost, is that there is a tremendous scope for areas of Earth observation system data to be handled and provided as a service on a scale which is currently not adequate, but which can be expanded through this kind of a thing. Investments are not large, the risk element is less, but at the same time, the demands are going to be high. The variety of demands are even more extensive. This is the second aspect of it is the fact that there are a number of technologies that ISRO has developed for various purposes, which is related to the engine development or the rocket development or satellite development or even ground systems development. They are all things which are a part of what you may call as spin-off technologies available. The question of a good spin-off assessment of what this kind of an activity can lead to in terms of other areas is yet to be done in an exhaustive way. And I think this is another area in which we can really help the entrepreneurs to come out with that we come out with suggestions, we make them the proposals, and they pick up some of these kind of things. The choices can be made for this kind of a thing. On both, there are many other things I can say, but this gives you an example of the kind of things that the current effort itself can produce. Entrepreneurs, whether using a good material for an earlobe thing, or there have been even discussions you create an artificial art which will be there, or the questions related to how do you use image processing to improve the early detection of certain diseases. In fact, I should say the NASA has a special group for this kind of a thing, and this special group, what it does is it only identifies all these spin-offs, and in areas like medicine, health, education, and so on, they separate it out, and then many companies come over and take the technology, adopt it, and make it into a marketable item. I think this process, can be set in motion, and it can have tremendous impact in terms of encouraging a youngster to have probably a fairly assured direction in terms of an investment, which is not as risky as putting it into a rocket or a satellite.
Thank you, sir. Sivan?
Whatever Kasturirangan sir was telling. Sir, this is exactly one of the objectives now we are given as a part of reform, and bringing that technologies developed by the ISRO to that outside, mainly for the spin-off. That actually is not part of that in-space activities, is a part of that NSIL activity. So anyway, there is whether it's through in-space or NSIL, that anyway public will be definitely reaching to public, and they can really take further this activity. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Dr. Sivan. Let me check if any of the other panelists want to come in on this before we go to the next question. Aisha, over to you.
Yeah, thanks, Mudit. Our next question is a follow-up question to what just Dr. Kasturirangan and Dr. Sivan mentioned. So both of you have worked at ISRO, and ISRO has done tremendous work and attempted audacious missions under your leadership. We really want to hear from you that how can India as a nation focus on developing capacity and capability for the space science in Indian researchers and young students before they come and become entrepreneurs. So any thoughts around that would be very inspiring for our younger generation watching the panel discussion. Dr. Sivan, would you like to go first?
Yes, there is. It is also a very good thing, and we have provision for that also. And we are announcing that opportunities from ISRO for developing the cutting-edge technologies by academia. And we already have a very system that is called response system, but forget about that one. Now we are proposing that a formal announcement of opportunity we are going to have as a part of this reform. By this process, that is that whatever the technologies that are required to develop, the opportunities will be given for the students, that academia, before they become the entrepreneurs. At the same time, suppose that it is not only simply that allowing that when announcing opportunity, definitely that we will fund the required technology development. At the same time, if they wanted to test their system in our facility, that also we will allow them to do it. So only thing is that we need their brain. Everything else we will support. So the brain should not get out of our India, and we want them to develop further, so that when they are growing, they will become the real entrepreneurs, and they can do much more work than whatever we are thinking. That's what our aim. So it is, the system is in place. That's what I want to do.
Thank you, sir. Thank you so much. I think the younger generation is really excited to looking forward to all of these opportunities and see how they can also start engaging themselves in the space technologies. Dr. Kasturirangan, would you also like to share your thoughts about how we can really make this transition and inspire?
You know, instead of giving, thank you for this thing. I would specifically focus on one area which is also related to space, but which has a tremendous excitement among the younger minds, and that is astronomy and astrophysics. I mean, there are many other things which one can discuss about, but why I'm bringing this aspect is you have a program in ISRO, for example, where you have a planetary missions, and this is going to go from Chandrayaan to Venus and to Mars and asteroids, and those, that is one other stars kind of objective, looking at the sun and its evolution and its activities. The third aspect of it, there is a fairly large amount of interest among the youngsters. Okay, do we have an opportunity for them to get this and get them enthused, so that on one side they get into studying these aspects of it, and where possible get into kind of a research, and ultimately also take this as a route to understand the space program a little better with respect to the overall context. I think this exercise has not been done to the extent. For example, astronomy and astrophysics has been done with an inter-university center for astronomy and astrophysics. But if you look at it with respect to a center for space science, and the center of space science creates thinkers of tomorrow, and these thinkers are the people who can then work in space because they have been already enthused by the excitement of space. And so this is one connection that one needs to bring in a larger context of academy, ISRO interfaces. And that is one way to do this. The second aspect is the same thing can be done, of course, with the industry. We try to do it with IISc and with IITs and so on. I think in technology, in other areas where we need to create, already ISRO is expanding and funding fairly large amount of programs in terms of specific areas like robotics for astronaut, for the lunar missions and things of that kind. But I think there is a scope for increasing this. And the third element is the question of leadership. I think this is a little different from just taking interest in the area of specific areas, whether it's astronomy or technology or related areas. Leadership is a kind of a thing which needs to be grown. And this has a role both within the institution as well as there are specialized institutions which can do this in a separate band. I think the present leadership issue, and I'm sure Vijay will be able to say this a little more, because he now is facing this problem not only across space, but in the overall context of science and technology and other institutions. I think we need to have a mechanism to create visionaries, thinkers, thought leaders, and people who have a broad picture of the role of science and technology in the context of social, economic, strategic, and many other dimensions. I think the number who can talk on it with confidence with respect to the multiple dimensions and which leads to a good leadership is something we need to address. And I think this could be automatically a requirement when you try to increase the interface with the industries. There will be more youngsters who work in this kind of challenging areas, and probably many of them will throw up as alternate leaders, even for governmental systems like ISRO.
Aisha, if I may add something just here and share a little bit. You may be aware, and I think Dr. Sivan has given his blessings for Atal Innovation Mission to partner with ISRO, especially in our Atal Tinkering Lab. We have now more than 5,000 tinkering labs, and many of them are going to be introducing space technology-based modules. We already have something called ETL Space Module, but we are going to be introducing, along with ISRO, specific modules and space labs to be integrated into our Atal Tinkering Lab, and that is work in progress. And the other is we are planning to launch very specific challenges that ISRO and the industry needs so that we can stimulate the necessary innovation from startups. These are challenges not only from the point of view of how to support the space industry, but how to leverage the space industry and space applications for the betterment of communities and community innovation and so on. So there is all these things are already in plan. And I think this will be a wonderful opportunity for private sector to further get involved and the young students to get inspired. And we launched recently Thinker from Home module where one of the biggest interests by young students in schools was one segment on space that we did and a webinar that we connected, and one of the talented students had shown the CubeSat and how they went about developing it. And that actually created tremendous interest and inspired many people. So I just want to share that little bit of information.
Yes, thank you so much, Mr. Ramanan. In fact, we are all so excited. I believe that I'm also so personally motivated to take up one of these courses soon enough, as soon as they get launched and they're open to everyone. Thank you so much. Now we'll also move on to Parth and Rohan and try and get a perspective from there, because they have really been entrepreneurs and taken this step before everybody else could even think about them. So Parth, as a young startup, I'm sure you are excited about the recent reforms. Could you also elaborate a bit on how these reforms are going to create a positive impact on the growth of Skylo's business? And thereby, how will it really lead to faster improvements in applications in areas such as disaster management, agriculture, and other areas? And how do you also get to bring on more private players into and create a consortium sort of an approach to make a huge impact?
Thank you, Aisha, for the question. I believe that these reforms will create a path of least resistance for entrepreneurs who are solving some of the greatest challenges of India. In fact, space sounds like a very distant subject, but space contributes in a very meaningful way to farming, to fisheries, the television that we watch, navigation services, and weather prediction. For instance, the work that we're doing to connect anything from a soil moisture sensor, which can help completely digitize the soil health program, all the way to connecting fishermen across the country who venture out and brave their lives and don't have any affordable means of being connected. They can now, in fact, be connected to markets. And just imagine a sector where no transformation has happened for centuries. Business has been conducted the same way, and fish are sold in auction. You can now all of a sudden have access to digital e-commerce platforms, even if you're 300 nautical miles away from the shore. And that's the power of space, being able to completely transform industries. And my belief is all industries in India are going to become tech-enabled. And the terrain of India, the challenges that we face, penetrating data into the remotest areas of India is going to be absolutely critical to make sure that these applications are all inclusive, that our farmers can participate. It contributes meaningfully to our soldiers on the border who yet have a requirement for greater access to everything from imagery, from space to connectivity. So I'm personally extremely excited by these reforms. It'll allow both me and many of my peers to continue doing very meaningful work for the country. And I always work on that which gives me goosebumps. And of course, it's very heartening that I can continue doing work for the country.
Thanks, Rohan. That was extremely inspirational. And like we all are hoping now, how more and more private companies can also come and really transform the sector and the space to help India. I'll now hand over to Mudit to ask his next question to the panelists.
Thank you, Aisha. Thanks, Parth. Rohan, if you also wanted to maybe share your journey in space, how you became an entrepreneur. We have a very large young audience for this stream today. What your company does, the technology, and how these reforms or this change in the sector will enable your company to at a faster pace and go into a larger space, if you will. So, Rohan, if you can.
Thank you for this question. I believe space is so vast, and we have to explore it pretty quickly. And we started Bellatrix when I was age of 19 when we started Bellatrix, and we registered this as a company in 2015. And there were only a handful of companies back then. But now, within just 4 years, from 2015 to 2019 end, you can see there are more than 30 space companies in India. So that it's a positive sign that there are youngsters coming forward to provide solutions complementing to what ISRO is providing, of course, with ISRO's handholding. So we had the blessing of ISRO giving our first order to us. We work in the area of space propulsion systems. We develop electric and chemical propulsion systems for satellites. As I was saying, this is definitely a policy that recognizes opportunity. But on the other hand, a lot needs to be known, because we startups not necessarily need to play in the downstream. There are startups which can give a lot of technology complement with the country in the upstream activities as well, and that needs to be recognized. And from my side, what I would like to tell is there should be startup representation in space. So yesterday we heard our honorable chairman of ISRO speech, where InSpace would comprise of academicians, technocrats, scientists, and industry experts. So experience has industry comes with a different mindset. A startup working with space has different set of requirements and a different mindset. So this our representation in InSpace would also help propel this particular policy into a good opportunity. And there's lots for us to do, and we are there in the country to contribute to our space program for both peaceful as well as defense purposes. There needs to be a clarity on regulations, export regulations, even though we can offer world-class products, but still if there are no proper regulations, there's a thin line between defense and space when you're working on space technology. So all these things, if comes clear on paper, I think we have the edge to prove what SpaceX has done in the US. I think there are many companies in India which can do, and for us personally, this is a very welcoming move.
Thank you, Rohan. General Pannu, if I can quickly get your thoughts on the Defense Space Agency as a consumer, and how the evolution or the expansion of services from both private and government players like ISRO, how would that evolve for, let's say, a government consumer which is already starting to look at broader options? And how does this change affect or would affect how DSA looks at the options in its service provision?
Thank you for that. You're aware that we have a very large conventional as well as strategic forces in our country. Having now raised the space agency and also the cyber agency, you find that there is a lot of specialization which has come into warfare. There are systems and systems of systems. Also, a lot of remote warfare is something which is going to impact how the battles are fought. What is important here is that once we get the entrepreneurship by the startups or by industry largely contributing to the growth of this technology, this adds on to the strength of our military. Really speaking, we have more techno warriors, we have more space warriors which are available to us. And also this will not only empower the military, but also give us an edge in the world on what we bring to the table. When the indigenization of the defense industry is concerned, we can even go for export, because our products are going to be more valued outside. And purely from the business point of view, it is not only that you provide for your own armed forces, which is through niche military technology, but also you largely get accepted in the world that you have a technology which is not only making your military superior at home, which builds a deterrence in any case, but also brings in a lot of traction in the overall defense industry. I don't know why I always use this expression of hemoglobin. I think the space technology brings in hemoglobin to the digital warfare and digital platforms. Without this, I think it loses all the traction and the power. The number of interactions that I've had with startups, and I feel even when we were talking about the cyber agency, is that we always worried about the encryption and the security part. We have to have a huge amount of indigenization in our chip making. We have to have our own design and development and fabrication of it. We have to contribute to nanotechnology. We have to bring in better efficiency in how we operate our systems. We have to bring in more data management and more data transfer for applications which are going to be based on artificial intelligence, which is going to make the whole military platforms work better. As a result, you find that the 5G IoT, which in the military parlance would be Internet of Battle Things or Internet of Military Things, IOMT, IOBT, these are going to be possible only because of the space-based connectivity. They cannot be based on the terrestrial network, because terrestrial network is a fixed network. It suffers from a very fixed kind of connectivity. So therefore, when you talk about the future, where 5G, IoT, IOBT applications are concerned, I think space is the only answer. And the homegrown industry, where it is fielded at home, all the transponders are built here, all our ground stations are built here. I think we will be more comfortable to ensure. You see, there is a confidence building, which is also there between the military and what the technology brings. There's hardly any confidence sometimes when you bring in a product which is imported and you do not know from where it has come. There's so much of supply chain infection which comes along with it. So I suppose unless we do it ourselves, we are not going to be truly Atmanirbhar. And I suppose the Prime Minister, closer to 15th August, really speaking, when we talk about independence, real independence is being self-reliant, and self-reliance really means homegrown technology, homegrown production. And I suppose it will bring in a lot of profit flowed back into our system. That is, I would say, a huge contributor towards 5 trillion economy dream of the Prime Minister, laid out in the Niti Aayog paper, India at 75. I suppose when you put all these documents together, you find this is a huge enabler. And as I said in the beginning of it, I find that this is music. And this is going to be a huge empowerment, not only for the government of India, not only for the industry, not only for the military, but as Indian community, we are very proud of it.
Thank you, sir. Now we'll go and take some questions from the audience, which has been sharing a lot of questions online. Aisha?
Yes, in the interest of time, we'll take up one question from the audience. This is from Mr. Gokul Ravi. He's asking if it is correct to assume that with the recent reforms, now the private players will get the license and the permission to launch their own vehicles and rockets into orbit. So is that a correct understanding, is what he's wanting to know from our panelists? Can I invite maybe Dr. Sivan to share his thoughts on this?
Yes, definitely they are right. Their understanding is right. And by this reform, that the private players will be allowed to build launch vehicle, and private players will be allowed to launch their launch vehicle also. So I'm very happy that already some people are thinking of making a launch vehicle and ready for launch. This one. So it is extremely happy. And we are welcome to them to Sririgota for launch at the earliest.
Great, thanks. I think that's extremely helpful. And like we said, all these people are extremely looking forward to see how they can get support from the government to be able to participate in the journey. Do you want to ask the next question, Mudit?
Yes, we got a question from Anshuman Mahapatra, that how will the reorganization of the space assets affect the future launch vehicles and other existing programs like Chandrayaan, Mangalyaan? I guess this reflects the interest that the general audience has in ISRO's operations. They've been mentioning Unified Launch Vehicle, Admire, RLV. I guess the question is, how does this reform or how do these changes affect the existing programs which the audience really cares about and follows very closely?
Okay, this question is they are very anxious, and I'm sure the similar questions I asked yesterday throughout the day to me by media also. For this question, my answer is that none of these activities of ISRO is going to affect it. All that that unified launch vehicle, heavy lift launch vehicle development, that is that our advanced mission capacity building, everything will be continuing as we planned, and not a bit change. What we are telling is, number one, that apart from these things, there are huge potential for the applications. That is that the space applications, like Mr. Parthsarathi told very clearly, and I also have been telling, this huge potential is untapped. It is like a hidden treasure. It is hidden in space. I'm telling this treasure. That to unlock that one, definitely, that is, I want the extra hand. So instead of depending on that, the ISRO's 17,000 people, I am looking for hand from 130 crore people. That's what I'm trying to tell. It is that it is not that ISRO's activity or that programs, Chandrayaan or Gaganyaan, it is not going to be stopped or not that. That will be there. But at the same time, along with that, private players are enabled to do that activity, they will be given opportunity to develop the new technologies in the advanced missions also. So they have more opening for doing that work, this one. So otherwise that ISRO's activity or ISRO's the programs like Chandrayaan, Gaganyaan, the other activities not going to be affected. It will be going on as we planned. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir, for a very reassuring answer. I'll take one, actually combining 2 or 3 questions, which is that a lot of the growth in the US space sector was because of funding by NASA or startups and funding through SBI, etc. So, Dr. Bidushi and Rohan and Parth, what kind of encouraging support or what kind of financial support and other kinds of support would you like to request from ISRO or this the broader number of agencies, and what is the kind of support that you think would help expand the industry quickly? And we'll take this question, the answers to this question, and then go to Dr. VijayRaghavan right after.
You want me to start?
Yes, please, Dr. Bidushi.
Okay, so one of the most exciting things that I found in the last 5 to 10 years is that space has become a part of the identity in Indians. So it's no longer seen as this thing that other nations do. It's something that Indians actually realize that they themselves can participate in. And so we have buy-in, and that I think is key. And of course we need funding, and of course we're going to need government support, and on the commercial side, we're going to need investors to come in. But let me take a moment and put myself in the position of all those people who are watching us. We have young people watching us, and then we also have experienced people watching us. Once they finish watching this video, what are their options for learning more? There's a huge knowledge gap. So at this point, they have 2 options. Option 1, you sign up for a multi-year engineering curriculum, you commit yourself, and you become a STEM nerd just like me. The other option is you go and you Google, and you look for things here, there, and you get a very spotty understanding of what's available. What I would love to see is a structured knowledge base for people who come in, whether they're in STEM, whether they're young, whether they're experienced and want to do a career shift. I would love to see a structured way for people to enter and gain the knowledge that they need so that they can contribute to this multi-trillion-dollar economy that we are talking about for the coming decades. Thanks.
Thank you. Any quick questions, quick comments, Parth, Rohan?
Sure. I think to answer your question on what kind of support the private sector would need to create the kind of outcomes that you were referring to. So first of all, I think I'd like to say that the contributions of the private sector plus the public sector, when viewed together as Team India, would significantly boost India's strategic capabilities in space. And I think that if you want to take an example, for instance, ISRO is in fact the world's launch pad in many ways. when in February of 2017, we had the very inspiring launch of 104 simultaneous satellites. 88 of them belonged to my peer company, Planet Labs in California. In referring to what General Pannu sir was talking about with respect to the recent images that everybody's been seeing in the news media. Companies like that often get a majority of their funding from government being a customer. So as perhaps Rohan also mentioned, and Dr. Kasturirangan sir also mentioned, that the procurement policies of the government perhaps need a double click to ensure that startups have a very easy way to access government as a customer, both domestically and also internationally. And I personally believe that the private sector will be a force multiplier for ISRO and our national capability. And when the talent of ISRO and the private sector combine, I think the outcome is going to be a quantum leap for the country, and I'm very excited to collaborate.
Thank you, Parth. This has been a brilliant conversation. I think all of us learned a lot, and I'm seeing the responses on YouTube, an amazing amount of response. I now request Dr. K VijayRaghavan, the Principal Scientific Advisor to Government of India, to share his thoughts and talk about his insights into how this process is unfolding and what he expects.
Thank you very much, Mudit. It's really wonderful to hear Dr. Sivan give his overview, followed by Dr. Kasturirangan. Together, they symbolize a huge and long tradition of quality at ISRO and also now its future. You know, at the heart of this, we must look at what people like Vikram Sarabhai and Satish Dhawan said about ISRO's role. And ISRO is so deeply at its foundation tied to society in a manner which very few organizations in the world are. And that's something which ISRO has always kept in mind, and that's something that this new partnership with industry must also keep in mind. And the reason I say that is that our future, the future of the planet, hinges on the ability of us as humans, and humans have become the stewards of the planet as opposed to mere survivors of the planet because of our engineering and our use of technology. And our future hinges on our ability to deal with, at a planetary level, with climate change, with ecology, and the environment. If we can deal with all these three at the same time, deal with sustainable development, we would have created a better life for future generations. And that's a very complicated challenge. What role does space have in this challenge, which seems so terrestrial? And that was a criticism which ISRO had at its foundation, that why is India investing in space research, space technology at a time when it had so many problems at the time of independence and a little later? And we have seen the impact of ISRO on our society, which has been so enormous. Our education system, our communication system owes in no small, our agriculture, our health, owes in no small measure to the success of ISRO. So this kind of discordant note between cutting edge technology and people's welfare has been disproved by ISRO's very existence over the years. Now ISRO is opening up to a new kind of partnership, which allows our brilliant young people, liberate them to get into the use of technology in multiple ways. And you've heard from Bidushi, from Parth, from Rohan on one aspect of how this needs to be and can be done, and from General Pannu and also from Rohan about how security and other aspects can also be enhanced by this use of technology. Now, this inspirational view towards space, which India has and has as at a level of ownership, which Bidushi so nicely referred to, is something which is really vital and will spur right now. Now, ISRO, in its new avatar, has already decided to, even as it puts down these structures, to take on all these new responsibilities right away. So this really opens this whole sector enormously. Now, coming back to what it can do in terms of real impact, we can see that there are major missions which the government has undertaken where space plays a very critical role. And these, for example, let me give you 3 of them. One is the water mission, where the aim is to get water on tap to every village. That requires the use of sensor technology, pipes, and water supply, linking demand and supply in specific ways. And there, at the back end of all of this, is communication in real time. Collecting information about water supply, whether it's actually reaching or not, whether it's going to the tap or not, and feeding back. There are many terrestrial systems which will do this, but many of these are linked to space, and many of these technologies are really very vital in terms of ensuring that not only do you have the plumbing, but you have the water going through. Soil is another, agriculture is another. The excessive use of fertilizers, pesticides, water in an indiscriminate manner, and the poor understanding of soil quality in a micro sense is a very critical area which needs to be addressed. Here too, new technology, available technologies, Parth is an example, allows us to collect information at fine levels of granularity, address that and feed back to the farmer. Recently, there have been liberating structures to farmers in terms of how they can connect directly to the market in multiple ways. Those new structures combined with these technologies allow farmers to not only look after their land well, but reach the market in much better ways. So these again are different kinds of technologies which are going to be open. I'd like to finally end by pointing out what Dr. Kasturirangan so elegantly said, that the importance of research and astronomy. I would add to that both astronomy and astrophysics will benefit enormously from space research in ways which, again, our scientists will be liberated to use, partner with industry, and use in ways which were unimaginable. As we heard again from all of you, the micro level, the compaction of satellites and circuits in the size of a soda can, as Partho said, and also the communication technologies allow extraordinary scientific experiments to be done. Those will lead back into understanding of new physics, new science in a manner which will be incredibly valuable here. But directly, other kinds of research also can be very valuable in terms of what happens on Earth. One of the most inspiring examples is the NASA's GRACE satellite, 2 satellites launched in collaboration with the university system. These 2 satellites are in orbit at a hair's breadth fixed distance from each other. So when they go around the Earth, if they are changes in sea level or melting ice or mountains, their distance is altered, and the correction allows you to estimate very finely rising sea levels or melting ice or hills and so on and so forth. And this is an incredible use of an Earth-level understanding of the consequences of climate change. And those are the kinds of experiments now where Indian scientists, Indian technologists, and much better ones too, can design and implement. So this is really a very, very promising step forward. And this is something which we should grasp. Now, there will be an inevitable question about where we will get the resources for all of these new opportunities. And we must keep in mind that this is not a linear process. First, give me the money, then I'll do this. Then give me some more money, I'll do that, and so on. This is a bootstrapping mechanism where you have to be audacious and pitch what you can do. And if you pitch in a manner which is both effective, which has impact on society or on industry, or is just merely inspirational, money will come from anywhere within the government and from outside. I'd like to end by saying that this has to be a partnership between government and industry. The success of industry is the success of government. The success of this partnership is the success of all people. Thank you very much.
So much, sir. In the interest of the time now, we would like to conclude. And on behalf of the Atal Innovation Mission, NITI Aayog, Principal Scientific Advisor's Office and all the audience, I would really like to thank all the panelists for taking the time to speak with us, and most importantly, to inspiring thousands of our viewers. And we are extremely glad to be inviting all the young entrepreneurs to contributing to the growth story of India for the space sector. And we all strongly believe that with these reforms, India will successfully achieve its goal of sending a manned mission into space by 2022 on board Gaganyaan, as our Prime Minister had laid it out. And we would really become the fourth nation in doing so. So thank you very much to all the panelists and the viewers, and let us hope that we all stay safe together in this strange time of the world pandemic, and leverage this as an opportunity to unleash the creative entrepreneur within. Thank you so much, everyone.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Okay, Bindu.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye. Thank you, everyone. Bye.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Thank you, Vijay and Sivan. All
Thank you.
others.
Thanks.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Just message right now.
Thank you, Dr. Bidushi.
Congratulating you. Vijay said one.